It's the Joseph Bristol Show.
If you enjoy the video, hit the like. If you want to see more, be sure to subscribe.
Welcome to another episode of the Joseph Bristol Show slash clips of news, right? Where essentially, I think we already went over this. I merged the two into one, and we are going to go over news today. But essentially, Joseph Bristol Show is just me talking about real world things, life, and social dilemmas, and just how we can make the world a better place, and just the world. But clips of news is when I find news clips or news articles or videos about news stories that I think are really interesting, and I just share them with you, the internet, so that you too can know what's going on in the world and things of that nature. So on today's episode, I want to talk about the upcoming war that essentially is going to happen. It's just a matter of when, not even if it will happen. War is going to come. It's coming already. And some people already say that we're in World War III. So we're going to get over to the whiteboard. Also, I have a clip from the news story. The links will be in the description of both the news stories that I'm referencing when I'm talking about like why I'm saying what I'm saying, right? Okay, so let's jump over to the whiteboard. Right, all right, so I took little notes. First off, let's just go into World War III, right? We're already in World War III by supporting sides. Boots on the ground is next, right? Because this is what a lot of people are already saying. People aren't really saying it in the way that I'm just saying it, like right now that we're in World War III, but essentially we're already in World War III, right? The war in Ukraine with Russia, we've already picked sides. Like, you literally have countries supporting Ukraine already, sending them military weapons, guns, ammo, food, money. We're already supporting their war or their defensive, right? And then Russia already has support from China. China's giving them weapons and ammunition and food and oil and things like that. So we're already essentially in World War III. We just don't have boots on the ground. When I say boots on the ground, I'm talking about troops. So we haven't sent American soldiers to fight in the war. We haven't sent, Germany hasn't sent German soldiers, British soldiers, etc., to actually physically fight in the war, right? But we are supporting them. So essentially, we're already in World War III. Now, this whole war, right? So we want to say that the war is being fought about Ukraine, and basically Russia is trying to say that Ukraine is a part of the USSR. It was a part of Russia, and so they want their territory back. But World War III will be fought over microchips. Yes, it's going to be fought over microchips. It's not going to be fought because of Russia wanting Ukraine back. I can assure you it will be fought over microchips. It's either microchips or water. That's it. That's what World War III will be fought over. Microchips or water, right? So why am I saying microchips? Let's jump into the clip so that it can better explain it, and then I will get into the whiteboard notes that I wrote down.
And every country's chip industry was increasingly reliant on other countries for the materials, software, and equipment needed to make more complex chips. But while the US and its allies were pushing the limits of chip technology, China was lagging behind. In addition to the US blocking it from accessing chips during the Cold War, many of China's brightest scientists and engineers had been driven out of the country by the dictator Mao Zedong during the 60s and 70s. But over the next few decades, new Chinese leaders pushed to catch up. By the 1990s, the Cold War was over. The US had become friendlier with China, and it had lifted most of its export controls. And so China enticed many chip companies to move their assembly operations to China. And by the 2000s, China dominated this end of the supply chain. But China was importing more and more chips to feed its assembly industry, and it put them in a tricky position.
The Chinese government had studied the tech supply chain, and they realized the entire Chinese tech ecosystem relied on a foundation of imported silicon from China's geopolitical adversaries, from the United States, from Japan, from Taiwan, and China's leaders concluded, quite understandably, that this was a risk they were unwilling to continue to take.
Thanks to help from the Chinese government, his company was flourishing. And his story was just one of several instances of IP theft in the chip
The
industry.
choke-off
The
point.
Chinese government has been, at the very least, passively supportive, but in some cases actively supportive of IP theft, because the Chinese government realizes that its companies are in a position of relative weakness.
In order to eventually decrease its reliance on this foreign supply chain, China was identifying choke points like ASML and copying them. But the plan backfired.
And this has really angered U.S. government and other governments, and caused them to take China's subsidies as a more security-focused issue rather than just an economic issue.
This was happening at the same time that the relationship between the US and China was becoming less cordial and more competitive.
China's market distortions and the way they deal cannot be tolerated. A tremendous intellectual property theft situation.
Game on here, a trade war between the United States and China. Trump says he plans to impose a 10% tariff increase on China.
If they don't want to trade with us anymore, that would be fine with me.
In 2018, the Trump administration banned US companies from selling components to ZTE, a Chinese tech company. Then in 2019, it banned US companies from doing business with China's biggest tech company, Huawei, and its affiliates. These bans nearly bankrupted ZTE and dealt a significant blow to Huawei. In 2022, the next US president, Joe Biden, targeted China's chip industry more broadly. First, it banned all US companies from selling advanced chips to China, but it also blocked Chinese design companies from using US-made design software and US-made manufacturing equipment. Plus, it banned global companies who use US semiconductor technology from selling advanced chips to China as well. The US was exploiting these choke points to stop China's chip industry in its tracks.
These export controls represented a really clear shift away from the view that ultimately trade and tech exchanges with China were fundamentally positive sum to a much more zero-sum view of the technological competition.
Next, the US passed a law that would invest billions of dollars into its own chip manufacturing companies, and finalized a deal with Taiwan's biggest manufacturer, TSMC, to build manufacturing plants in the US, all to enable the US to keep racing ahead.
China and the US have a pretty similar view of the political stakes when it comes to semiconductors. That's why the US government has made it a priority to defend the US lead.
But this has also put extraordinary pressure on another conflict between the two countries. Since 1949, China has viewed Taiwan as a breakaway province and has vowed to reunite with it, even threatening invasion. The US has vowed to protect Taiwan, but Taiwan also happens to own the most important choke point in the chip supply chain. Taiwanese companies manufacture 63% of all chips and about 92% of all advanced chips. With companies that are indispensable to both the US and Chinese chip industries, Taiwan has built itself some protection. But the US export controls forced Taiwan's companies to make a choice: defy the US and keep selling to China, or comply and cut off China from some of its chips. So far, they've signaled they'll cut off China. But as China and the US feud over chips, more and more choices like these are going to be imposed on countries and companies around the world, asking them to pick sides in what looks a lot like a new Cold War.
Right. So you saw that in the clip, and that was just a piece. I took little snippets from the whole video. Again, the link is in the description of the entire video. The whole video is maybe 10 minutes long, explaining all of, that little clip that I gave you is just a little piece to explain what I'm talking about. But the whole video is really good, and you guys should watch it. So with that being said, as it kind of explained in the little clip that I gave you, well, it doesn't explain in the clip that I gave you, but in the video they explain that American jobs leave for overseas, right? Which is an important part of American businesses getting bigger and bigger and bigger, right? And giving us the products that we currently enjoy and we currently buy. That's why you see a lot of made in China, and it's always been that way, because it's cheaper in China than it is to build these things in America, right? Because American workers want to get paid. Like, you got to pay us $20, $30, $40 an hour, you know what I'm saying? You see how McDonald's is working. People crying about $15 at McDonald's. So like, we're going to want to get paid. And so these companies would not be able to build, or I mean they could, but they wouldn't be able to grow as fast as they did and make as much of a profit as they did if they stayed in America and paid American workers the wages that we would essentially demand from them, right? So if they stay here, they got to pay us big money, and so they keep the labor there. They keep the labor overseas, right? But remember, right now what's happening is there's a big move out of China, right? There's a big move out of China and into India. So a lot of companies like Apple have been moving their workforce from China and trying to build factories. They're trying to build factories in India, because not essentially because it's cheaper, but remember, India has a huge population. I mean, like, majority of the world lives in China, India, and Africa, right? So their labor is much cheaper than other places. So they're moving out of China and going into India, right? So we jump into Taiwan. Taiwan war is ultimately over microchips. Again, you saw it in the clip that I showed you guys. The war in Taiwan is going to be over microchips. China wants to take over Taiwan to control the supply of microchips being made all over the world, because Taiwan is essentially the microchip hub of the world. Like, majority of the world's microchips come from Taiwan. So because it's coming from Taiwan, then, you know, if you control where the microchips are coming from, then you control the microchips, right? And everything needs microchips: cars, TVs, weapons, right? The military weapons, everything needs microchips nowadays. So if they can control the microchips, they can control essentially the world's lack of better word, the world's growth, like the way the world grows and where and how and where it expands, right? So a few months away or years, right? So China invading Taiwan is only a few months away. This will happen, maybe not a few months, but for sure a couple years. It won't be long before China decides, you know what, we're tired of waiting. We're not gonna wait. We want to control the microchips now. We need to do it now. We need to move in now, right? So years, but only so long that they don't get pissed and just invade, right? So like I said, it's a couple years away, because there's only so long that they're gonna wait before they're tired of waiting and they say, to hell with it, let's do it, let's take over. And so once they invade Taiwan, that's when, like I said, World War III will be fought over microchips, because Biden and any other president after Biden is going to say, we will defend Taiwan, because again, that is the microchip hub. So America has to defend Taiwan. We have to make sure that Taiwan is protected from China, because if China takes over Taiwan, they will take over the microchip game. And we, as the country who builds its entire economy around military might, around muscling and bullying other people into doing what we want, if they take over that, then we are essentially screwed. We will lose our military advantage. So we can't afford to let them take over, right? So the microchips are everything, right? This was another one of the notes. Microchips are everything. Before we get into the stocks, though, before we get into the money making, let me see another one. Escalating violence will lead to nuclear decisions, which is 100% true. So Russia has already been moving tactical nuclear submarines into the oceans closer to Ukraine, right? And it's not Crimea. There's another nation, I can't remember, who's already said that they are willing to get involved in the war if Ukrainian soldiers cross the border and begin firing on their people. Then they will get into the war with Russia and fight Ukraine against this thing, right? So eventually, it cannot be avoided. Eventually, things are going to escalate. The violence will escalate into nuclear decisions, and I don't think Russia is willing to back down or lose this war. I think that they are willing to nuke Ukraine in order to show that, listen, if we can't have them, if they're not willing to comply and submit, and if other nations get involved, this is what we're willing to do. And I think that is a real threat. That is a real thing that could happen, that we could be looking at nuclear warfare fairly soon. And Japan preparing for war, increasing their defense budget over the next couple of years. Japan has been doing that, and I have a video, again, the link will be in the description, explaining what's going on over there in Japan, because they have been increasing their defense budgets. They have been amping up their military, because as soon as China attacks Taiwan, Japan being the closest ally of America, and there's many American military bases on Japanese soil, just like on Taiwan soil. Japan will be the closest, so they will be the first people to interact with China and combat against this Taiwan invasion. Now we get into the money. Stocks to invest in to make money off of the war. And I do not support war. I don't support violence. I think that as a species we are intellectually past the point of violence. We no longer need violence to resolve our differences individually with one another, broadly social, as in country to country, and just overall. Humanity is past violence. I think violence is something for ignorant and poor people. Ultimately, I hate the way that sounds, but yes, if you think that you gotta be violent to get what you want, you are an ignorant, poor person. Your mentality is that of poverty and ignorance. Because again, we as a species have gone past violence. We no longer need violence to get what we want from another individual. We should be able to negotiate and talk with one another. So I don't support violence. It's very important that I emphasize this again. But I do support making money. I support living a good life, right? And in order to live a good life, you need the tools necessary to live a good life. And what are the tools to build a good life in the world that we live in? It's money. Money is the tool that you need in order to build a good life. So what are the stocks to invest in to get money to build a good life? Chip makers. So you want to invest in microchip makers. This is like, semiconductors, ASML, like you just want to research chip making companies, but be careful because there's different type of microchips that are being made. So you want to invest in the microchips necessary to make money. So like microchips for robotics, for computers, for military based weapons, things like that. Raw materials and mining corporations, right? That's the next stocks that you want to invest in. Raw materials are needed for anything. It doesn't matter. But in order to make guns, you need steel and metals and, you know, screws and things like that. So raw materials will make you money. Gold, silver, platinum. Raw materials is a good way, right? Another way to make the money is shipping companies. So we're talking like boat companies, shipping yards, trains, even trucking companies, because again, these things, the supplies have to be moved around, right? So shipping companies is a good way, investing in those things. And sadly, of course, weapon manufacturing companies is a good way to make money off of this whole thing as well. Weapon companies, companies that build military grade weapons, even if it's like Smith and Wesson 9mm, all those things have to be used in wars. So that is essentially another way to make money off of this whole thing. And so I just wanted to make a quick video talking about World War III and how essentially it is coming. Like, it is going to come. Like, there's no avoiding this, because China will in fact invade Taiwan. The question is just when. When are they going to do it? And so they're amping up to do it. Japan is amping up to defend them. America is amping up to defend Taiwan. So everywhere they know that this thing is going to happen, right? It's just a matter of when will it happen. And maybe it happens when Russia escalates to the point that they're talking nuclear warfare, and that's when China decides, well, everybody's worried about Russian nukes, so let's just go and invade Taiwan now. And now it's a double front where America has to fight, or maybe China's waiting on America to actually physically put boots on the ground in Ukraine, so that it's a two-front war. Now they got troops over here in Ukraine defending Ukraine, and they got troops in Taiwan, which thins out their ranks, makes it easier to pick them off, divide and conquer. Who knows when they're waiting, but for sure we know that it's coming. They are going to invade Taiwan. So I just wanted to make a quick video on how we can make a quick buck off of this, how we can make some money if we even survive. Because if it becomes a nuclear warfare, it doesn't have to actually hit your country or your state in order for you to feel the effects of nuclear warfare, right? Remember, these things will go up into the atmosphere. It will literally have devastating effects on our climate, on our planet, because science matters. Science is a real thing. It will have economic effects because, you know, you're talking about companies can no longer mine or build certain materials. People can't go to work. It's gonna have effects. The ripple will go all over the world. Everyone will feel a nuclear war. Everyone will feel it. Like it will affect all of us all over the planet. I don't care where you're from, where you're at. You will feel the effects of a nuclear war, whether it's small or big. It's going to have huge impacts, and any stock market is going to, you know, go down as soon as a nuclear attack happens. I can promise you that stocks will fall. They will tumble heavy. So maybe hold on to your cash until then. I don't know. It's just a thought. It's just a thought, but I just wanted to make this video because I've been thinking about it, and like I said, I watched these 2 videos, and it crossed my mind, and I was like, yo, I got to make a video talking about this because this is a serious thing, and it's really gonna happen, right? So thanks for watching another episode of the Joseph Bristol Show, clips of news. I appreciate it, and let's all remember, man, we all out here trying to do the same thing: survive and be happy. Y'all stay blessed.